You're strongly encouraged to try this at home if you want to, but if you don't, we'll do it for you. Okay, we are doing categories, keywords, and more with AI. Now, let's get the big cat in the room out of the way first. If you think AI is taking over the world, I have good news for you. The current generation of AI cannot possibly take over the world. Cats can. Ergo, do not let cats use AI. Don't. In case you're curious, I highly recommend the historical document, Cats and Dogs. It's animated, so it's an easy view. So what is AI, or artificial intelligence? AI is computers thinking like a human. So to use it the most effectively, we need to understand how a computer thinks. So what's hot for today? First, we'll get into computer thinking. Then we'll get into what do you do about computers thinking wrong? And then we'll get to the starting point, synopsis or chapter summary. And then we'll get into the details, the book description, the categories, the keywords, and all the other little stuff. The current generation of computers are actually pretty dumb. They understand exactly two things, 1 and 0. That's it. Everything else you see, the colors, the sound, the letters, the words, is programs creating magic. But the computer only understands 1s and 0s. You know, we turn those into hex numbers so that they're easier to read, but the computer still only understands 1s and 0s. So what does that mean for a writer? You know, we deal in words. We see words. We read words. We can instantly tell what a word means. We don't have to think about it long once you get past like 2nd grade. The computer does not. The computer sees 1s and 0s. So to bridge this gap, the US came up with a standard like in the dark ages of computing. And they pretty much coined the terms. So historically, a character is 1 byte, 8 bits, and the ASCII code that the US used would encode the US alphabet and the numbers and a few special characters. Well, that stopped working once we started selling all this stuff into the rest of the world. So now we use Unicode, which is international and has 149,813 characters. So it can cover pretty much any language in the world. And so at least in the Western languages, the computer has one advantage. It can tell where a word ends because we have spaces in between. And that's just simply that what you see there on the screen. So we understand the words. But to the computer, it's just numbers and it doesn't mean anything. That may be fine when you're asking a question like, well, how far is LA from Las Vegas? You know, that is clearly determinable. There's an answer for that and you can verify it. But when dealing with words, there is a problem because math is an exact science, but English is not. That's best illustrated by the word set, which has 51 dictionary meanings. 5-1. The current generation of AI, you can bet that it is the probability of the AI getting every sentence with the word set with it correctly is somewhere around 0 to 0 to nada. Because it just isn't that precise. Because these large language models, all they do is word statistics. They do not understand what the words actually mean. They read all these documents that they are fed as training data, and then they figure out, okay, if I start a sentence with I and then put love there, the most likely next word is going to be you. That's how they basically build sentences. They have no understanding what it means. They parrot what they see there in the wild. And that leads to for one thing, a problem with majority rule. Let's go back to the classics where most of the protagonists were men. Then the most likely word following is either you or her. But if you have mostly female protagonists, like in modern romance, or at least half and half, well, that's no longer true anymore. But if the training database is biased towards the classics because they're the best sellers, if they weight by, say, book sales, well, then you get skewed results. Then there's also the problem that the sentences may just appear randomly. If you have a character that constantly sings the Beatles song, and I love her, you may have that turn into a romance, even though it's something completely else, because and I love her happens so often coincidentally with the story. And I'm not going to call that hallucination like the scientists call it euphemistically. If the computer gives you an answer with absolute certainty that isn't couched in any way, which these things don't do, it's a lie. You know, because there's no factual basis behind it. It's a lie. It's wrong. And by the way, Forbes also called it a lie, so I can get away with that. Finally, with these ever larger models, you have the problem of parallel computing. The way these AI systems require so much processing power, there isn't a chip around that can handle it. So what these systems really are is gigantic clusters of computers. The biggest cluster right now has 130,000 computers in it. So you can bet you that if you have an 80,000 word manuscript, every chapter, probably every sentence is going to be processed by a different computer. The sentences have different lengths, the processing takes different times. So the results come back out of order, and there's other computers that are now going to have to process this. The problems you're going to see when you have works that long is that things start slipping out of order. And I have yet to see a manuscript that was processed that didn't contain such errors. And you then again have this issue of coincidence, because as characters appear throughout different chapters, the AI sees the same words, the same names, and it starts pulling them together. And so your plot is suddenly out of order. And if your plot builds on revealing things incrementally, suddenly nothing makes sense anymore. So you have to understand that particularly authors that are dealing with large numbers of words in AI, you're going to have a very high error rate. So all the big models right now are overall about 80 to 85% accurate. But that, of course, includes answers like how far is it from LA to Las Vegas that are pretty much 100% correct. So that should tell you that particularly the stuff we're dealing with that is dragging down these averages is somewhere in the 60 or 50%. That in what we've done so far for the workshop, none of the answers were ever 100% correct. None of them. There was always at least one or two mistakes in there. And on the bigger works, of course, considerably more. So that is the challenge. And as fiction authors, we have another challenge. Artificial intelligence is not artificial emotion. The AI barely understands the words. It doesn't understand emotions at all. AI has never gone to high school. AI has never held a job. AI has never fallen in love. They have no concept of what that means. If they've been fed enough, say, romances, they know what words appear with love, but they don't know what the emotion means. So forget the AI actually giving you good emotional sentences. There are ways to deal with that are more precise. But if you just ask it, oh, write me a love scene, you'll probably get mediocre results. You need to follow a few rules when you're dealing with AI and English. First, AI requires human expertise for the input and the output. If you don't get the beginning right, the prompt as it's called, you're not going to get good output, and you're going to have to check the output and probably do some rewriting. If you don't want to deal with this all by yourself, get specialized tools. I'm going to show you a number of them. There's a whole cottage industry. There's tools available for writers and tools for other general purposes, because the current generation of AI, as I said, makes a lot of mistakes. And there have been some spectacular ones like Canadian Airlines or Getty Images that ended in court and led to monetary damages because the stuff is really bad. And as I said, the computer only understands 0 and 1s. Everything else is done by programs and by their training, and they don't have the experience. You have to explain to AI like you would to a 5-year-old. It's an AI assistant. That's the best it can do. And again, the results are only as good as the prompt. And don't trust any answer. Of course, if you ask 2 plus 2, if it's 4, yeah, okay, you can trust that, but why would you ask that of the AI? Verify every answer because it probably will contain mistakes of various kinds. And that means if you want to get the best results, get a second opinion, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. Either retry or better yet, change the prompt and resubmit it. Because if you just hit retry without correcting the answers, chances are you're going to get the same bad answer. And if the answer is really bad, if it's just factually wrong, if it didn't follow the prompt, hit those 2 little buttons, the up and down hand, and tell the AI it is wrong and why. That's why it's there, because it will learn immediately from that prompt, and some get sent to humans to then correct the algorithms that are screwing all this up. This is artificial intelligence, not artificial emotions, particularly if you're writing fiction. Take the output from the AI as suggestions, rewrite in your own voice, unless you train a personal chatbot, which you can. You can feed it all your works and say, no, write this the way I write. But unless you're willing to go through all that, and that takes a long time, rewrite it in your own voice. You need that human element because the AI really doesn't know what it's doing. Why do we start with a synopsis? For one, it is inefficient to analyze the manuscript every time. It takes a really long time. Even if it's computer time, you're talking noticeable seconds to get an answer about a manuscript. Plus, even the paid plans have limits. They have window size limits that you can submit. They also have overall limits because AI is very, very expensive. Somebody calculated that every AI question costs 4 cents. Now, if you consider that YouTube pays you fractions of a cent for an ad view, you can imagine that Google cannot possibly make money on a 4-cent question if it's submitted to AI. Every company puts limits on their freebie plans, and there's limits on the paid plans. And as far as I recall at the moment, the biggest window that you can get on the second level plans, not the enterprise plans, but the second level is 80,000 words. So if you're writing epic fantasy or epic sci-fi, you have to break up the story. And now your whole synopsis goes down the toilet because there's parts missing. Doing this from a manuscript is not good, or it doesn't work really well to begin with. But also, as we saw, because the bigger the work, the more it gets broken up among computers. You have this parallel computing problem. So the errors, of course, increase with the size of the prompt. You can do it just to get an overview. One nice thing with feeding it the manuscript, if you have an account that allows it, is if the AI goes totally wrong, totally off the rails at certain points, you may want to check those points in your manuscript because the reader may also get confused if the AI got confused. Now, readers usually know more than the AI, but if you just got the point of view character wrong, you made mistakes in time, setting, or you start confusing hair color and things like that, the AI may have triggered on that. So you can run the whole manuscript through just for the hell of it and say, give me a synopsis and see where does the AI go wrong if you need to do something with your manuscript. But that doesn't help you to get the metadata because we want a synopsis that's working now. We don't want to spend all this time fixing the manuscript. While that may help you with, say, if you're going to submit it to an editor later, that you can fix all these things that the AI had problems with, or you can just run it through and say, do me a proofreading, do me a content development edit, because it can do that. It knows the rules. It just has to apply them correctly. And if you prompt it right, that can save you time and money then when you send it to an editor. But the main thing is basically we want to be able to easily correct the next step. We want what we use for the book blurb, for the keywords and so on, to be correct without having to correct the whole manuscript. That's why we do a synopsis. So this is what I got when I sent the whole manuscript for cyberspiracy just through this simple prompt. This is just the beginning, the first two paragraphs, and there's already 3 mistakes in there. One fairly serious, in my opinion. The AI totally focused on the missile launch, even though 2 entire chapters deal with the bombing of the US, which is the actual inciting incident. So it missed that. It didn't consider it important enough compared to the missile launch. Okay, there wasn't a lot of mention of casualties, and the missile launchers killed some people, but you see how the AI already set a different focus than what I had intended. Then they get into that she gets these hacking tools from the CIA and the NSA, including an AI-enabled robot dog named Chibi. That's just not true. An entire chapter is devoted to how she gets the dog. It says verbatim in there that it was a gift from Derek. The AI just missed that, or the computers assembling the pieces didn't get that. And finally, it says Chibi was disguised as a toy, which isn't true either. It says explicitly in there Chibi was bought off the shelf in Tokyo. It is a toy. It's not a disguise. So you see how quickly this went off the rails, because the missile launch and the bombing are chapters 2 and 3. If I'd taken this manuscript and tried to extract the synopsis that's workable, I would have to start fixing things in chapters 2 and 3, and there's no end in sight to that. You can try guiding it with a more specific prompt, and you don't have to come up with these by yourself. So this one, all the ones I use here are in the handout. If you want to do this yourself, download the template from the handout and use it. And I started with another template that somebody else provided. There's a whole cottage industry. If you want to do something, first do a search for prompt, for AI prompts for that particular task. You'll probably find a starting point. I've actually listed the site that I used in the handout. And it doesn't matter which AI you use because the prompts are essentially the same. What you can do is, because they do use different vocabulary depending on which company you go with, you can ask the AI if it understands the prompt or how it wants to be prompted. But in general, these are generic enough that they should work on any of the platforms. You want to be very precise. Like, if you don't set an upper and a lower bound, you have no idea what you're going to get. I got everything from a 1-page synopsis to a run-on forever. Based on my testing, I found 5 pages, 1,200 to 1,300 words, gives you a good balance of speed, and it includes enough that the plot, the themes, and the emotions can be correctly summarized when it comes then to the book description. But you need to tell the AI that. Again, you're dealing with a 5-year-old. So it says in there 1,200 to 1,300 words. the following manuscript. And then if you want to make sure you get good results, give it as much of the information that you think is important. And that starts with who is the main character. And because you probably use different terms for that character to make it less repetitive, you need to give it all the names you used. Any nicknames another character uses, like her friends call Cowabunga Dude CD. Others call her Annie, like her mother. And of course, formally, she's Annabelle Elizabeth Allerton. So all that is in there, as also known as, so that the AI understands these are all the same person and it is the main character. So don't go off on some tangent. At one time, the villain became the main character and Cowabunga Dude became a male because the AI couldn't associate that name with Annie. So you see, you're dealing with a 5-year-old. You have to be that precise. What do you think is the central conflict? And what are the key scenes that revolve around that? And to me, the UN Security Council and the launching of the Chinese missiles are part of the central conflict. So you tell it to focus on that. Then you get into like, this is the villain, and then later on the villain's aliases all get, and then what other relationships are in there. And you want to tell it some other things like, what do you consider key turning points? Which chapters matter? Because again, we're trying to get a good synopsis, not trying to fix problems. So we want it to know, this is what I think are the key chapters. So you give it the key events. Then her boyfriend is Gigasploit. And then we say, what are the key relations? So the key relations is Cowabunga Dude and Ricky and Arthur, in addition to the boyfriend. That's at that point kind of assumed, but this is not a romance, so that is not a main relationship. And then for a good book description, you want to know the themes. This also influences the categories and the keywords. If you know what themes you've been shooting for, put them in there, like courage, exemplified by these pivotal moments, these key chapters, and so on. Again, if you want to check for your mistakes, just ask it to do the themes without giving it all that and see if they actually come back. If they don't, then you are not mentioning your themes enough, and that means you have a structural problem. Because we can't get a synopsis from the manuscript that is decent in any way, shape, or form, we're going to start with a chapter summary. Why? It makes corrections and use to generate the synopsis possible. It's also easier to spot misses and ordering problems. Like, I don't really know, based on that first synopsis, why the AI ignored the UN bombing. I don't know where it went off the rails. If that came after the missile launch so that the AI thinks the missile launch is more important. And you can't see that from the synopsis because the synopsis doesn't have a time ordering. If you go chapter by chapter, it's easy to spot if the AI pulled something forward, if it's missing a crucial chapter, maybe it just skipped over chapter 2. It's possible, happens. These mistakes happen all the time. It's also easier to spot these wrong paths because it may have pulled stuff forward and then combined it, and suddenly it thinks something else is going on, like it suddenly turned Chibi into a toy, into a hacking tool instead of an actual toy, whereas the hacking tool doesn't appear until much later in the story. At the beginning, it's just a toy. And it also allows more precise instructions, because if you can see where it goes off the rail, you can go back and say, okay, no, redo chapter 2. You missed the UN bombing. And also, as we discussed, if you're doing epic stuff, it's not going to go in one path. And you can't build a synopsis that way. But if you're going chapter by chapter, it doesn't matter if you only send a quarter of the manuscript or half. The chapter summary should still be correct. So it's easier to split the work that way. If you did some fooling around with, what do you get if you don't give it specific prompts? Remember, the AI, at least for the session, even those that do not store it for training data, for the session, it will store its previous results. So if you then send the detailed prompt after it, it's already going to be biased towards the bad version. So you need to, depending on the version, tell the chatbot to forget, to reset, or just start a new chat. Like in the case of Claude, which we use, you just start a new chat and it will forget everything that is in the other chat. They're completely separate. The AI does not know what a word is, really. It certainly doesn't know what a chapter is. Even if you put chapter on there and a chapter number, it doesn't mean the same thing to the AI as it does to a human being. You have to clearly identify the chapter in an unambiguous way and tell it exactly where it ends, because it doesn't understand that the chapter heading of the next chapter ends the previous chapter. It is that dumb. This is particularly important with things the size of manuscripts. Word stores formatting information in the file. Word, if you do things like track changes or corrections in there, Word stores other things in the file and it may start moving chunks like the revisions elsewhere. So a Word file, you cannot guarantee that it is in correct order to begin with. And unless the AI is good at parsing Microsoft Word, which it probably won't be, Microsoft Word format is an internal proprietary format. They do not release it to the public. All the people that make something that is Word compatible kind of reverse engineer the thing. So if you want to make sure that the sequencing is as clean as possible, either paste in the whole manuscript or convert it safe as a text file, a TXT file. That is just what you see in order, straight Unicode characters or ASCII, depending on what choice you pick. And that gives the AI the best chance of getting it in order. It will still screw up, but it is the best chance that it gets. And also, as I said in the prompt, process chapters one at a time in small batches as you go so that you can correct major errors when they happen. Otherwise, you may have to go back. If I found out at the end that it skipped chapter 2 with the UN bombing, well, now I get to redo the whole thing. And I might run out of credits. It takes a lot longer. So do this in small batches. And that is one reason why we are making this available for you to do at home. Because if you want us to do the more interesting stuff, you need to give us a good synopsis. You're the best person to do your own synopsis because you can correct it one chapter at a time. We have to send you the full chapter summary for you to correct before we can do the synopsis. And that means that there may be so many errors in there that the full chapter summary is worthless, like as would have happened if I just put it out the way it was before. This is something that you should do yourself. You will get a better results from us if you do this yourself. And particularly if you're curious how good your manuscript is, if there's problems with flow and proofreading and so on, it may be worthwhile to just buy a pro version for $20 for 1 month and just run all these things and generate the synopsis so that you can get all this. And it's quite instructive to see what the AI thinks of your manuscript. So that's why we're giving you this presentation and all the prompts, because it is really better if you do the synopsis yourself. Nobody knows the work like you do. But so this is the prompt that we use to generate a chapter summary. And again, you don't want it too short and you want to have certain other things in it that the AI may not do. This is a very detailed prompt. It is 1 page long when you look in the handout. But again, you're dealing with a 5-year-old. Now, so we're telling it at least 180 words because it's happened that it just put out 2 sentences per chapter. Because yeah, that's a chapter summary, but that's not enough to do a good synopsis. So at least 180 words for each chapter. And you want to tell it what you're doing this for because it makes a difference. This is a thriller manuscript. And because if you don't give it a name, it will start inventing some because it's going to have something in there like this is the chapter summary for such and such. So give it a name. You can skip the author, but give it the work title so that you don't have to fix that afterwards. Then you notice that I put double square brackets in front of the chapter because that is guaranteed not to happen in any manuscript. Single square brackets maybe, but not double, so that there can be no confusion. This is the chapter start. Go in strict chapter order. Don't skip any chapter. You have to tell it all these things because it doesn't understand what a novel or a chapter means. To it, it's just numbers. Go one chapter at a time and double check. In the big AIs, chatbots, that kind of phrasing will force it to go 1 or 2 or 3 chapters at a time and ask for confirmation. If you use one of the smaller ones that don't have that built in, you may have to fiddle with the prompt to get it to do that. But that is the ideal thing. You want to correct mistakes as you go. You don't want it to run through and use up your credits and then have to go back and start again with chapter 3. Go in steps and tell it, do not include materials from later chapters because it doesn't understand that in the novel you don't do that. You do not pull stuff forward to it. It's okay. I'm talking about this character. Why not? No, you have to tell it don't do that. And if it gets it wrong, tell it that. You pulled stuff from chapter 8 into chapter 5. Redo and don't do this again. You have to tell it what not to do. And you sometimes, like a 5-year-old, may have to tell it that 5 times until it gets it. But eventually the algorithm is going to catch on. You don't like this. And again, if it's really egregious, hit that thumb down and tell it you didn't follow the prompt. And then comes the same thing we had in the previous synopsis prompt, because you still want to have it include in the chapter summary all the stuff that's important to you. So the main character is Cowabunga dude. Also, that is word for word the same thing. So all the templates use the same thing so that it includes the same stuff regardless of how you do it. And it includes the villains, the key events, the central conflict, the themes, all the stuff that make a good book description, because you have to condense the themes, the feels, the tropes into this 150-word book description to capture your ideal target audience. That's why it's important that we start with that. Otherwise, we're not going to get it at. There are some professional tools to build chapter summaries and storylines. Unfortunately, none of them produce an output that's good enough to feed to the AI later on. But if you want to go step by step and put in detail and see what you're missing, and like Fictionary will give you the AI interpretation of your chapter, and you can then see, oh, it doesn't agree with mine. Where did that go wrong? These all cost money, but they may be worth it if you want to do more work on it. The extensive tool for story is Fictionary. So you see, these are all the things that Fictionary will look at. Now, don't get confused with the story blurb. It's actually expecting it. It doesn't generate it, unfortunately. It's expecting you because, again, Fictionary cannot do a good job if it doesn't know who the main character is, who the central. So all this information that we put into the prompt, all these tools either need to guess at or you need to tell it. Otherwise, you don't get good results. But then Fictionary will do the story structure, will do take it apart into chapters. It will even look at scenes. It will look at tension, conflict, point of view, stuff that we don't particularly care about for the book description. It goes to that detail if you are interested. Timeline, setting, story goal. And for one thing, for example, what you get out of Pro Tools is advanced functions like this is the story arc, where you can see how close are you to the ideal arc, are the plot points, the middle, and so on there. And this is based on, the standard 4-act structure which is really what it is. It's not 3 acts, it's 4 act, that pretty much everybody uses except for a few instructors. They just call things differently. But this is roughly where you have to have these things to have a decent pacing. Now that we have the chapter summary in good working order, we can finally do the synopsis. So you see here now, it's still the same prompt. We want roughly 5 pages, 1,200 to 1,300 words. I'm still telling it all the important stuff, the main characters, blah, blah, blah. So you can just copy that from one to the other. And then remember, you are paying for every pass. Even, 4,000 words is already a unit where they start charging you. And remember, you'll be parallel processing. There's probably thousands of computers working on this. So you can ask it as many things as you want in one pass, as long as you clearly segregate them and are very specific, because it's just going to get farmed off to another computer, but they're only going to charge you for that one window, especially if you're going to do 5, 10 different synopses to compare and cut and paste together. Ask for everything at once. We're also asking it for a list of characters and the chapters mentioning them, because that's good to have. I want to see the tropes, because again, that flows into the book's description. So I wanted to think about it. I want to know if I got the target audience right. If it gives me a different target audience here than YA, I've done something wrong in the manuscript. Give me 7 suggested book marketing keywords, give me the bisect categories, and give me the comparable books to market this story. So we get all this at once for one payment. And of course, it also roughly takes the same amount of time. Now we get to do the really important stuff. And again, same thing. For a book description, you are as precise as possible, because people don't like to read. You shouldn't exceed 150 words. We're telling it maximum 150 words book description. And I'm asking for 3 at once. Because again, as we discussed, if you do a retry, even if you tell it you did something wrong there, it's still going to remember what it did previously, and it may just give you a variant of what it just did. If you asked for 3 at once, it has to generate 3 different ones. If you want 10 different synopses to compare, ask for 10 at once. If you want to have wildly different synopsises, tell it to use different genres or different voices. Generate me 10 different synopses, including ones with the voice of Hemingway, with the voice of Tolkien, with the voice of whatever. The more you do together, A, the cheaper it gets, and B, the more variety you get for sure. We also tell it again the genre, the name. We identify the main character, blah, blah, blah. You've seen that before. Because this particular book has a strong romantic subplot, I do want the romance considered. So I tell it that explicitly, that the romance, to include that in the book description. And I, of course, have to tell it between whom, because I told it a different boyfriend, but this is a triangle. So I have to tell it, I want the romance between CD and Arthur. Ignore Gigasploit. And for a book description, you want the call to action, and you want it to include a comparable title. This is just since we already asked for it in the previous prompt, which we're going to get better ones when we get the comparable title from the chapter summary, because it's more detailed, but it doesn't hurt asking for it again. It's a freebie at that point. It produced this. This is the first synopsis it produced. Now you notice again, it's about 150 words, and there's 2 mistakes in it. The AI doesn't understand what it's doing. It doesn't know what a book description means. It will probably have done the same thing if I called it the blurb, because there's no agreement what a blurb is. It may have even made it worse, because there's so many different definitions of blurb on the internet. But it didn't understand that you don't do things like codename Cowabunga dude in a book description. You're trying to write something engaging that grabs the reader. You don't want to do something like that. And of course, in the manuscript, it calls it a hacker name, but that got lost by the conversion to the synopsis. The more important thing is it got the key conflict wrong. The key conflict is not about the love story versus her mission. That's not what it is. It's not the impossible trope. So this book description is basically at least 50% wrong, in my opinion. So you see the problem of why you have to have all these details and make corrections along the way. That's just, it doesn't understand it. It's 5-year-old. It's never actually read a book. It just sucked it in and taken it apart. There are also, again, pro tools that you can use to generate the book description. And one nice thing about getting it down to a 5-page synopsis is it's within the window or close to the window of the free versions. So once you have the synopsis, you can cancel your paid subscription unless you really need it for some other reason. Also get second opinions from other chatbots, like you can use Google's Gemini AI chatbot, which is still free to use with the limits on the window and the overall limits for like a month. But it's a lot harder to hit those with just a synopsis. And you can play around with the synopsis for free, months after months in Gemini, and just ask it for different things. So maybe the keywords we sent you sparked ideas and you want to research other keywords. Now you can feed the synopsis to Gemini. You don't need us to do it anymore. Kindlepreneur, the people that make Publishers Rocket, put out a free book description generator that normally you feed it your book description and they will try to improve on it. But the book description generator uses a 4,000 character window. That is roughly 4 pages of the synopsis. So you can feed the Kindlepreneur book description generator the entire synopsis or multiple versions of synopsis and have it condense it down to a book description. And it has all the prompts already built in. And if you want to go line by line, sentence by sentence, which is really, in my opinion, the best way to improve a book's description, you can send it through the headline analyzers. There's various available on there. But you can also just have Gemini try to improve it. Because again, now we can use the free version. So this is the Kindlepreneur book description generator. You see on the right, the synopsis that we got out of the AI chatbot. And on the left is what Kindlepreneur did with it. This is the beginning of the output from Kindlepreneur. It's quite different from what we fed it, but it isn't ideal either. You notice that the beginning isn't really a hook. The reason this isn't that good is because, again, all they do is feed it to their own chatbot with some additional prompting, but it's still another AI tool in the background that doesn't understand what any of this means. This is not a well-structured book description. And it's also not particularly emotional because the AI doesn't understand that. Annie must use her unique combination of skills. That is the standard formula for a movie pitch or a book pitch, but that goes to an agent. That is about the plot. It's not a book description that's supposed to suck in a reader because that is an ad. It's a totally different story. So even Kindlepreneur's version, which as far as I know, they use ChatGPT, isn't particularly good. It's difficult to convince the AI to make this look like a good book description. The best I found is ask for 3, ask for 5, ask for 10. Do individual analysis on them and pick the best sentences out of them and put together your own book description out of them. But there is one thing we can do with AI that it can do pretty fast and pretty well is we can improve the emotional marketing value. Ad industry that writes ads for a living uses very rigorous methods because there's a lot of money at stake. So they came up with various systems to ensure that an ad is as emotional as possible. And one of them is the emotional marketing value. It's a list of words that trigger emotions in humans that also contain the directions of the emotions, an empirical score of how people react to it. Now, these lists cost money, and they're probably copyrighted because a year ago, I could at least download some of these lists from the AI. Now they'll give you maybe 50 words because they probably got slapped on the hand with lawsuits or cease and desist letters, so they won't tell you the lists anymore. But they seem to have enough in their training data that they will at least look at the lists. So you can tell it something like improve the emotional marketing value. That is the term. That is industry term. It will understand that of the following book description for the YA thriller. And you notice it changed prodigy to genius. It changed high stakes to life or death. And you can, if you want to do this very thoroughly, put in the prompt and give me your reasons. Usually it will do it anyways because it understands that you want that. But if you put it in there and give me your reasons or give me suggestions for improvement, it will tell you why. Genius is probably for most people, because a lot of people are not going to know prodigy. Genius is just more popular and probably has a better ring to it. And certainly life or death is better than high stakes because death is very emotional. So that's already an improvement. But again, we need to build a good book description. So let's try to do this even more thoroughly. And we do see here, so this is the improvements include, and I want to point out particularly line 10, added thriller-specific power words. Guess what? The emotional response depends on the genre. Obviously, a thriller will have different power words. This is what they call emotional words than a romance. That is why we always include the genre in every prompt because it matters for book marketing. You market a thriller differently from sci-fi, from fantasy, from romance. You need to tell it that detail if you want to get good results. And it's telling you right here why. You know, it probably would not have put life or death in there if you said this is a cozy mystery, because they respond differently. So details are important for good results. You're dealing with a 5-year-old. It doesn't know what a thriller is. Even if it knows that this is a thriller based on the words that it found, it doesn't know what that means. That is the reality. So now we're going to go into much more detail. Calculate the emotional marketing value of each sentence in the following book description for the YA thriller, Cybersplosion. Also determine the Flesh Kincaid reading score. Because this is an ad, you want a low reading level. You want to make it easy for people to read your ad. And so level 9, which is typical of AI-generated content, that is 9th grade reading level for a 150-word ad, is not good. You don't want that. You want to get down to 6, maybe 5 if you can. That's why I asked for it. So again, you need, and AI is very verbose. All the chatbots do this. All of them. They just put out verbose output that sends the reading level through the roof, use words like prodigy. So they are not good at writing ads unless you tell it how to do it. So you see here again, there's genius, there's life or death. Copywriters consider 40% good. You want to get above 40% if you can. So you see like the first sentence is 33. That's pulling down my average. So I probably want to replace that sentence with a different version. And again, if you run 10 synopsis, 10 book descriptions through this kind of analysis, which you can do with AI, which the headline analysis, you'd have to do it one by one, you can pick the highest scoring sentences from different parts and put them together. One word of caution. Every AI chatbot uses its own list, so you can't compare these numbers across chatbots. So if you're going to cut and paste high scoring ones together, stay within the same system to make sure the scoring is still the same. I also got the suggestions for improvements. So you see again, the AI did recognize that the opening sentence is not good. It's not a good hook. So you want more immediate danger in there because, again, I told it it's a thriller. If it were a romance, if I would tell you want more romance in there. But all these details matter. So it picked an even better word than genius because genius is still a word that a lot of people don't understand. And that's not necessarily really emotional. Brilliant is a much better word. No discussion there. And you see, this is where AI is good at. If you can formulate a prompt that tells it exactly what you want, and the emotional marketing value is very exact because it's based on math, which the computer understands. You can get really good suggestions from the AI because you would probably be sitting there now brainstorming words or looking them up into thesaurus, and the AI can do that much faster if it has an objective mathematical standard to go by. And that's what the emotional marketing value gives us. So it can come up with ever better words to substitute. It's also saying the same thing, add more emotional stakes to shorter sentences like copywriters do. Because guess what? The longer the sentence, the more filler you have. You have to have prepositions. And, or those are not emotional. The longer the sentences get, the more the score drops because they're automatically not as emotional. Shorter sentences work. So again, the AI generating the book description had no clue that it was supposed to do that because it didn't understand that it's writing an ad. It may work if you tell it, write it an ad, but I found it's better just to do this separately so that it can clearly focus on something that it can clearly understand. And again, because I told it I want the romance in there, it told me enhance the romance elements desperately for art and so on. So you see, the AI is really good as a tool for suggestions as long as you know what to tell it. And as long as you can then use your own judgment on the output to make it better. So I'll give a quick summary of what a good description should look like that you can then use to massage the results you get from us. Pretty much all the marketing people will agree, start with a hook, whatever that means. Now, if you are a best-selling author, the hook is usually New York Times bestseller or something like that. For those of us that don't have that, you want a very engaging emotional sentence that carries the genre. So for a thriller, you want something dangerous. For a romance, you want something romantic. For sci-fi, you may want to open up with a killer technology. Keep it short, 150 words or less. Amazon has found people don't read beyond that. 80% don't. You want to give it just enough so they want to know more what will happen. And again, AI is really bad at that. It cannot judge that. It doesn't understand cliffhangers. It doesn't understand mystery. So you may have to take words out, but it needs them in the synopsis so it can generate a good plot line. You want to give it a taste of the language and your voice. Again, the AI, unless you train it, is not going to be good at that. And it takes hours, if not weeks, to train it. So if you're doing a one shot, just rewrite it yourself a lot quicker. And for nonfiction, you want the main takeaways. And for fiction, you want the main plot line. And you want to limit the characters and story elements. A confused brain doesn't make a decision they don't buy. So leave out the names except for maybe the main character. And show the main conflict and the stakes. You want danger, life or death. You don't need to spell out, yeah, she's going to get killed. Life or death sets the stakes in 3 words. Make the main protagonist come to life. You want them to fall in love with your character. That's what this is all about. Avoid backstory. We don't need to know where she went to school. Doesn't matter unless it takes place in high school. Different story. Deliver value, not a review. This is not a description of what happens in the book. This is an ad. Make it about the book, not you. Unless you have a big name, they don't care who the author is. And set the expectations. This is the genre. This is the main character. This is the age group. this is what you can expect. That was the whole point of that last part. You can do this yourself, or you can ask the AI, you can use the headline analyzers, but pack the words with fields. This is an ad. You want an emotional response from them, because if they respond emotionally to the book description, chances are they're going to equate this with what's in the book. And if that's what the book delivers, that's what you want. And again, active. You don't want to be is not, is, was, doesn't have an emotional value. If you can use emotional verbs, kill, shoot, those are going to raise the score compared to is or was. So you don't want those in there. Use active verbs. Flow in keywords if you can. Now, this is particularly true of Amazon, because Amazon scores your book based on the keywords, the book description, the titles and the subtitles, and the categories. They look at everything. So if you can reinforce certain keywords in the description and in the title and subtitle, Amazon is going to score that book higher for those keywords, which is good for you. That's just the way the algorithm works. So don't stuff them, because if it goes totally off the charts and Amazon thinks that this description doesn't fit the book, you're going to get penalized. But if you can flow in keywords naturally, do that. Load up on emotional power words and make the reader feel something. Make them feel laugh or cry. That's the best thing you can do. Categories. Amazon finally started using BISAC, the book industry standards and communications categories. Finally. So in the revamp of their category system on KDP, they will now let you pick BISAC categories. Everybody else already did that. Amazon started with their own categories years ago and then had to back into the BISAC, but now you can do everything with BISAC. So if you let us do it, you're going to get the BISAC categories. We're not going to give you the Amazon categories, because KDP now takes BISAC. Amazon sells by their own categories too, though. They're going to map the BISAC categories into Amazon categories, and the Amazon categories are not comprehensive like the BISAC categories. The Amazon categories are created to sell books, because they sell books. So they create categories if they notice a big demand for certain keywords. So like this year, we got a new category, billionaire romance, because obviously enough people searched by billionaire romance that they say, oh, we need a separate category for that. There are all kinds of problems with Amazon categories. There's lots of duplicates because the bookstore created separate categories from Kindle, from Audible. So you could have 3 categories across the formats, depending on what you do. Some are missing, and as Kindlepreneur found out, and as Amazon has confirmed, a quarter of the categories, 25%, are ghost categories. Amazon will not rank you in those categories. If you specify them, you're going to get rolled up to the next higher category. And if you included that too, you've just wasted a category. So unfortunately, I mean, the only way to really tell for sure that it is a ghost category is if it has no bestseller list. So if you pick a certain category, go to Amazon, look for its bestseller list. If it isn't there, that's a ghost category. Immediate out. In the end, these categories are genres. That's why they map to the BISAC codes. But they are very finely detailed genres. So as that, you can take the romance all the way down to billionaire romance. It's like 4 levels or 5 levels down. How do you find good categories? Well, you can ask the AI, of course, because the AI can read the public data from Amazon. So chances is pretty good that every chatbot out there has sucked in the sales page for each one of Amazon US's 9 million books. And since the categories, the top 3 categories for that book are in the product detail of that sales page, that is something the AI can pretty much figure out for any published book. And if it can figure out the tropes that are comparable to other books, it can tell you pretty much what categories match yours. So asking the AI is a good start. But you can also do what you can do in KDP when you're doing BISAC searches, or in Draft to Digital, which started with that. The keywords we give you, type everyone into the BISAC search and see if there's a category that matches it. Because then the keyword can reinforce the category, which is, at Kindlepreneur found out, Amazon is actually checking now. Remember, Amazon now stripped down. You can only get 3 categories per book because they've gotten too many complaints about people trying to become bestsellers in categories that don't apply, or just overloading with categories that don't have anything to do with your book. So Amazon's now restricting you to 3 so that you actually have to think about it more. And also, if you still try to cheat, they will kick you out of that category and put you somewhere else, because they care about the user, the reader experience. They don't care about you. You are a vendor to them. They have to give you money. They care about the reader experience. So they will penalize you if you get the categories wrong. And one way to make sure that the algorithm knows you belong in this category is if the keyword that underlies that category shows up in your keyword list, or in the book description, or in the title. So you see how this all interacts. And that is where you have to use your judgment, because only you truly know how well any of this applies. So if a category is important to you, use the keyword that matches it to pick it and reinforce it. Again, there are professional tools for that. A free tool is BookLink. Another free tool is Book Category Hunter. And while Kindlepreneur Publishers Rocket, that is a pro tool that costs money, is known for its keywords, it also does categories because they're so closely linked. If you have Rocket and we use that, that's part of the package that you get from us. That is really at the heart of what we do, is that we got some of these pro tools so that we can offer them to the membership. Because Rocket is good if you write multiple books or you're a publisher, but if you have 1 or 2 books out, it's a lot to invest in, and it has a steep learning curve. So if you just have 1 book, we'll run it through Publishers Rocket for you and give you the optimized results from that. So this is BookLink. BookLink is based on the Amazon Standard Identification Number, or the ISBN. So this is the BookLink entry for cyberspiracy. So you can put, if your book is published on Amazon, you can put your book in there. It will pull all your categories, including those that Amazon stuffed in there. Because it will do that if it sees your sales and your clicks and determines, oh, we're going to put you into this category, so we have to do so many calculations. It will pull that because it gets the data from Amazon, not from you. It pulls Amazon directly. What BookLink will do is, if you want to see what other categories you could possibly use, you want to look to your comparables. And you want to look to what do the big writers do. For every category it finds, it will have these buttons, the top 100 bestseller list. So this is also a quick way to check if the bestseller list even exists. They will give you the recent new issues because Amazon keeps separate lists for that. So if you want to write to market and you know in that category what's hot right now, you look at these, and then the catalyze button combines all these lists and then pulls all the categories of all these titles into one, including it counts what are the most popular subcategories that the top 100 bestsellers and the new ones use, and so on. So rather than you sitting there and one by one put in comparable titles and see, oh, what are they doing? You can click one button and it pulls the whole thing for you. Even if you just start with the 3 ones you got from doing your own keywords, or the 7 if you do all 7, this will suddenly explode that into dozens, if not hundreds, all with a few clicks of a button. This is Kindlepreneur Publishers Rocket. And again, they pull this data straight from Amazon. This costs a lot of money. That's why Kindlepreneur Publishers Rocket is so expensive. But see, what they now do is they will tell you if it's a ghost category. If it's selectable, you can use it. If it's not selectable, don't bother. You cannot get ranked in this category. It will also tell you, oh, there's a duplicate. This is in the bookstore. So somewhere else, there's the same category in Kindle or in Audible. It will also give you the scoring of the category. That is the biggest problem with doing it by yourself. Because Amazon doesn't give their sales data to mere mortals. You have to basically hook into their algorithms like Kindlepreneur this or Klytics, which costs a lot of money, and there's AI backends to both of those tools because it is that complicated. But they can tell you how many books does the #1 bestseller in this category sell per month. So if you want to rank, and I found out through these keyword analysis that my book does really well in coming of age because it is a coming of age story. It's not fake. I have that now as one of my categories. And if I wanted to rank in the general fiction coming of age category, I would have to sell 1,000 books a month. Probably not ideal. There is a science fiction fantasy coming of age, but there is no thriller one. So the best I can do is YA coming of age. But that's still a smaller category. It's easier to rank there. There's less competition. It also tells you, like this category is heavily dominated by publishers that have a marketing department and people that knew how to do this analysis. You might not want to waste one of your 3 categories on something where you're going to be competing against really top-notch people. Although with only 18 to rank up there, maybe it's still worthwhile, but that's why they give you this information. There's also an insight button where if you pick certain categories, you can get even more information. And you notice it is linked to the keywords. They are interrelated. Remember that. So here is the insights page. It gives you the same thing you had there, but it also gives you the sales trend. It gives you an overview. This is high competition, but it's also high profit, so it may be worth it. And then it gives you additional insights. They pull this straight from Amazon's search data. This isn't stuff that's easy to get. You can kind of figure it out by typing in these keywords and categories into the Amazon search engine. They do it through AI in one fell swoop in a few seconds. And because of this whole penalty system now, they also pull the keywords that Amazon associates with this category. So if I want to be sure that I stay in coming of age, I want to use coming of age in one of my keywords. That's why they do this. So again, you can figure this out for yourself. Of course, obviously, this one is obvious, but like teenage would also do that. So if I do not want to repeat coming of age because I have it as a category, I can put teenage protagonist in there or teenage main character, get a slightly different search market, and still stay in the coming of age category. So that's why we have that in there, which is a nice segue into, well, what is actually a keyword and why is it so important? Okay, let's dispense with this right away. I have to keep calling it a keyword because that's what so many people and the AI understands. But Amazon started that on their KDP interface 14 years ago, probably now live to regret it because it really doesn't say what it means. And in fact, Draft the Digital calls it a search term because that's really what it is. This is what people type into the Amazon search bar. And most people type more than one word. So the word keyword is already incorrect. And you get the best results if you can match as much of the search term as possible. So the correct term, if you want to use it at all, is long tail keyword phrases. That's what they are. Or you just say search term now and be done with it, because that's what it is. Because the search terms can be up to 50 characters. And as Kindlepreneur has found out from the analysis, whatever you put into the keyword fields will match any word typed into a search field. Even if the term doesn't make sense, you can put in YA horror romance teenage protagonist and it will match romance teenage protagonist. It will match horror teenage protagonist. But because you get 50 characters, you in fact get 7 times 50 characters, 350 characters that you can stuff with keywords as long as they apply. Because again, if you cheat and the keyword doesn't lead to sales or leads to complaints, you're going to get penalized for that. They will probably just drop that keyword and you just wasted that entire phrase. And as you saw from the categories, you have this push and pull going on between, well, there's a lot of books in there that make a lot of money, but that means a lot of competition. You only get 7 at Amazon. You only get 1 or 2 everywhere else. Apple, Kobo, they don't give you 7. They only give you 1 or 2. What are you going to use your precious keywords for? Do you go for high profits, low competition? You certainly don't want to go for something that isn't searched. So you want at least moderate search and ideally low competition. And there's also a list of unacceptable keywords. Anything, for example, that ends up in erotica, you will get immediately kicked out of that categories and keywords, and you will end up in the erotica section in Amazon, which is not searchable. So unless you meant that, don't put in things that smack of sex. I probably wouldn't even try sex, but that's a different question. So what search terms do you pick? The most important ones are probably those for your story. Plot themes, that's why we ask for them. Plot activities, plot events. For thrillers, bombings, killings, hitmen, those are important. You may, especially for genres where the setting has an emotional value like sci-fi and fantasy, want to include settings, locations. If you're writing historical fiction, certainly you want to include the historical time period. You may want to include the time of year. That's especially a holiday thing. So obviously you're going to see a lot of marketing for Christmas holidays, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah. You want to try to get the characters in, ideally with the plot theme, because again, you want the people to fall in love with at least the main character. And you may want objects or other things in there, magical wands, high-tech weapons, X-Wing fighters, if that matters. You may want to hit a subgenre, get into genre, style, and tone. So like cozy versus hard sci-fi versus things like that. So these are things where you get to pick, and at Amazon at least you can use all of them. The other vendors you have to really focus. Create your list, and we're going to get you started with a list from the AI, and we will also run it through Publisher's Rocket. And you can, again, once you have the synopsis, you can play around with the free AI to your heart's content and have it suggest 100 different keywords that you can then analyze. Try to combine related terms into these long tail keywords so that you get as many that matter into these keyword fields, and then rank it with the most important ones on top, so that when you go in and fill out a draft to digital aggregator form, or you go directly to Apple or Kobo, you can just pick the top ones off the top. You don't get confused with which ones to use. Put some of them, if you can, into the title or subtitle, or if you don't want to change the titles or subtitles, at least in the book description. If you look at Cyberspiracy, you will see in there, it says YA thriller, because That is what it is. It says in the subtitle. Don't throw away the rest. If they apply to you, just because they are not really searched or if they're too competitive, you may not want to waste your 7 slots or your 2 slots on those. But if they apply to your book, you can still use them in ads, because in ads, you can put in 100 keywords, 150 keywords. As long as they're related, that will make for a good ad. And you may get a sale out of, say for the sake of argument, it is a Star Wars similar story. You probably don't want that in your keywords because there's going to be too many searches for the actual Star Wars. If you put it into an ad as a keyword, somebody searches for Star Wars like, you may get a hit there and you get a sale. No, in an ad, it doesn't cost you much because you can have 100, 150 keywords there. Under the new regime, where all this stuff is analyzed for consistency, what Kindlepreneur is suggesting is use 3 specific phrases you want to rank at. So that's probably will be story and character elements. Yeah. And those should be at top. Those should go to the other vendors that only give you 1 or 2. If you have keywords, if you have terms that you like, but that don't relate as much to the story, what they call leftovers, pack as many of them in 2 of the remaining fields, so 100 characters to those, and then reinforce your genre categories with at least 2 fields. And again, you can stuff those, because as long as I have coming of age or teenage in there, whatever comes afterwards doesn't matter. It will keep me in that category. So I can make teenage werewolf in New York, and I will still stay in coming of age, and I still use up the rest of that field. And also, remember, Amazon allows 7 per format. 7 for Kindle, 7 for paperback, 7 for audiobook. If you go that far, 7 for hardcover. If you link the sales pages together, all searches lead to the same sales page. That means effectively that sales page has 35 or, not 35, sorry, 28 or 21 keyword fields. So you can maximize your search potential by linking all this together. And if you want to know how to select keywords and categories from the masters at this, Publishers Rocket has free tutorials. The link is at the bottom there and in the handout. And they will walk you through in excruciating detail how this actually works and how they built the software to make that happen automatically. What tools can you use to do keywords and categories research? Amazon Search and Google Keyword Planner are free. And why do these matter? By far, the biggest digital advertiser is Google. The second biggest is Amazon. If you distribute wide, or you just want to know if people search on Google what they search for, you can type in the keywords that we suggest to you in Google Keywords Planner and get all this information from them for free. It's not specific to Amazon, so it won't be as good as the Amazon data, but it's probably for most parts good enough. And there's another thing to consider. Google has all this search data. Google does. Just like Amazon won't give it to other people easily, Google certainly doesn't either. And Google owns Gemini. And Gemini is now built into Google Search. If you ever wondered what that blue diamond is that comes up on some of the search results, that is an AI-generated Gemini result. So if you're going to do keyword research with an AI tool, I would strongly suggest considering doing it in Gemini, because nobody else is going to have as good search data. And if you don't want to do this by yourselves, because this basically involves putting in the keyword into Gemini or asking Gemini to generate them one by one and into Amazon. And what happens is all these already use AI. Google has been using AI searches for years. It just didn't say so. Amazon's been using AI searches for years. Every one of the autofill list is generated by AI. So if you type coming of age into the Amazon search bar, that list that pops up of, do you want coming of age books? Do you want coming of age science? That is generated by AI based on Amazon's monthly ranking of those terms. So that is the search results frequency for that month, for that term that you see there in rank order. That's how Kinderpreneur can back determine it. Publishers Rocket does all that in seconds instead of you having to do this one by one. That is basically what they do. You can do all this by yourself, or you can save time and have Publishers Rocket do it. So if you type in coming of age, you get the same list that you would have gotten typing it into Amazon. They present it to you in a way that stays on the screen, and they then pull all the stats they can find for those words. They look at the associated books with that, the top 100 books. They look at how long are they on average, because Amazon keeps all these statistics. They look at the number of competitors. They look at the average price. And then they calculate based on the average sales numbers for that month. This is how much these books earn. Then they look at how many Amazon searches go on for that keyword, and they calculate a competitive score. And what is really nice about Publishers Rocket is they color code the results to give you a quick overview as to what they consider a good search term and what they don't. Ideally, you want a search term that has a green search. Don't want red. They have a yellow category. If you run out of greens, you'll have to use those. But ideally, you want that. The other thing that is nice is because you see the whole list and you don't have to scroll through it. If you actually scroll to the bottom, because remember, Amazon uses every word in the keyword field in the search. So if you type coming of age thrillers, you may end up with thrillers coming soon. Perfectly good match. This just proves the point that it does use all those words. In any combination, it can match. If you don't want that, you're probably not going to have problems with your 7 keywords, because those searches are free. And so what if it hits on that? The people are going to ignore it. But if you get that as a hit in an ad, you may want to put soon as a negative keyword to avoid that. So these are little things that you can glean from the lists on the left. It's also interesting to see what other coming of age hits. And again, if people don't finish typing, they may end up looking for one of these, and it will impact your search results. So it's good to know what comes up, but most importantly, it's good to know how to rank them, because this is how these colors are determined. If you look at the red arrows, obviously more searches per month are generally better. 747 is better than 371. But if there are so many books in that category, with a lot of really high selling books that you have no chance of showing up on the first 3 pages of the results, what's the point? If you look at the blue arrows, if the searches per month are roughly the same, lower competition wins. So techno thriller Kindle books is better than techno thrillers because there's less competition, and was just enough to push it into the yellow category. But if the competition is drastically different, like the orange arrows, 11 versus 83, even 400 more searches per month don't help you, because you just can't rank in there unless you're a big name author. So then again, the lower ranking term is better for you. Unless that category is so profitable if you look at the purple arrows, a 30-point difference in competitive score by same search amount still gave the nod to the higher competition term because it makes 10 times more money per month. So that even if you just get a few sales per month, it's a better term to use than the bullying romance, which just doesn't earn all that much. So you see how complex these calculations are. I mean, this is Amazon data. Now, that's how well they know this stuff. That's how they know what to serve based on these keywords. This color coding really helps you quickly determine what keywords you want to use. And then also it flows into what categories you want to use. We will do the Publisher's Rocket analysis for the 7 keywords the AI suggests for you, and we will give you the results. What is also important to notice is on the left that these are actual search terms. So you have to know what your audience is exactly searching for. There is a huge difference between techno-thrillers and techno-thrillers. Techno-thriller and techno-thrillers with a plural S. You notice 700 searches difference per month. Because most people never finish that because they think it's understood. But it matters when you're doing keywords, when you're doing these phrases, because Amazon matches that way. It also makes a difference if you write techno thriller, which is what most people use, versus techno thriller with a space, or techno dash thriller. You see, techno dash thriller is used so little that don't even bother. If you're going to use a term, use techno thriller and then stuff the other things on there. Because you notice, if you go for the long tail keyword, the search performance becomes much better. And remember, because every word is used, if you put in techno thriller Kindle books, you get technical thriller for free. It's going to start matching because it's in that list. But you get the precision if somebody uses the long tail keyword, so you have a better chance of a sale if you use the long tail keyword phrases. So combine as many fitting terms together. And if you can combine them in a way that makes logical sense for a search, if somebody types in technical thriller Kindle book, that's direct hit almost. And if they put the S in there, you have a complete direct match and you'll probably rank fairly highly. This is what the point of this analysis. And again, you can do it yourself by just typing into the Amazon search bar and seeing the order in which these terms appear. And you can do it in Google Keywords Analyzer and get some of the data. They, of course, won't have Amazon sales, so it's not as good for book sales, but it's free, so can't argue with that. Kindlepreneur also added another feature that is, again, because this is very time consuming. It uses their AI, so it's very expensive. They limit it to 50 a month. But you can type in an Amazon Standard Identification Number, ASIN, or an International Standard Books Number, ISBN, in there, and it will tell you for that book what keywords it found associated with it. And again, these are Amazon keywords. These are not what you put in there. What you put in there is going to be in there, but this is everything Amazon has associated with that book in their database. And it's based on sales and search clicks. If you have any sales or clicks at all, this will tell you what Amazon thinks works well with your book. If you give us an ASIN or an ISBN with your submission, we are going to look up your book and see what Amazon thinks about it. There is also a function that, based on the ones it found, where Publisher's Rocket will suggest additional keywords to use. We will give you those too in the color coding. If the book isn't published yet, or you don't have any sales or clicks, we will instead use the top comparable suggestion from AI and run this analysis for you and give you those. And you can do, of course, the same thing by putting the comparables into Booklink, putting the comparables into Amazon Search, into Google Keyword Analyzer, and see what they suggest works together. This is probably the biggest reason why you may want to run ads. Even if it's just for 6 months on a low budget with low cost keywords. Because the ads, if they get clicks, generate data. And if they don't get clicks, you know whatever keywords you're using are no good. So, and don't use the suggested prices. Amazon overcharges. If all you want is clicks, bid low, because remember, the auctions start at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. Pacific time, and go to around 2 a.m. the next day. All the big name authors that are throwing money at this will pick up all the searches in the morning, in noon. By evening in the West Coast, their budgets are probably used up. I pick up high value keywords all the time because sooner or later the budgets are gone and then I'm the only one left or the few left and I get the click and I get it half the price because that's usually Amazon often overcharges by double. And if you really want to save money and just do the analysis, go to a small market like Canada. The search is probably going to be the same. They watch our TV programs. They probably think in the same English as is, and the different pronunciation doesn't show up in the search. Adjusted for US dollars, Canadian search terms are 1/3 the cost. So if you're just doing keyword research, start in Canada. It comes, you can advertise internationally with Amazon account just like your books show up internationally. You may not use it, but it's there. And do that for 6 months because you need that to at least get some traction. And then Amazon will have enough data to do this kind of analysis on. And this is what you will get from us. So we will do for the top 7 keywords. We will do for the suggestions. We'll aggregate them in a list like this with the color codes and give it to you. So if you only have 1 or 2 books, this is a much better deal than buying Publisher's Rocket by yourself, which retails at $199 and occasionally is on discount for $169. It used to be a lot cheaper, but because they added so many AI features now, they have horrendous ongoing costs. So this stuff is now pretty expensive. Bidding for either Amazon ads or Google ads. Obviously, for book sales, Amazon is better and you get better data. But if you create Amazon ads and every book, if you go to KDP and click that button on the right where you do updates and so on, there's also one for advertising in there. You click that, you get taken to Amazon advertising. You can do like bid 6, 7, 8 cents in Canada. You know, that's what most keywords go for up there. And just try different keywords. See if you get any takers. See what, and once you run ads, you will get up, you can generate a monthly report of what keywords they clicked on. So they will tell you what you saw in there on this list. These terms are terms that showed up in ads of people that clicked on my ad. And also Amazon also tracks which one of those led to sales. They have all this data. They can tell you pretty much exactly, okay, you got a sale for this keyword, you got to click here, and that lets you judge these keywords. And obviously, I mean, since nobody knows my series, nobody knows me, I'm not going to waste a keyword on my own name because there's less than 100, it's red. Now, anything that is red less than 100, don't even bother. If it's red with some searches, well, you can think about it, but like this one is a total waste. But I didn't put that in there. That's something that people typed in or that I had as keyword at one time. I had domestic thriller as keyword at one time that Amazon then combined to come up with this at one point. this is the main benefit of Rocket is it tells you what not to waste your time on. Obviously, coming of age thriller is one of my keywords because it does really well, and I know that. I know that also from the ads because the reports told me so. But so something like this, 861 with a 33 competitive score and a $22,000 per month potential, absolutely. And it's already long tail, and I still have something left there. I could probably put on back there, you know, coming of age thriller with female protagonist, and I get all those combinations. Or female main character. I have to look which one in scores better.
People are bidding. Were you implying, and you also said, and then they run out of budget, and that's when you can get in. Were you implying by that it's better to maybe bid later in the day?
No, because you run the ads usually for a month or longer.
Right.
Yeah.
So
no.
what were you suggesting by
all it means is basically
yeah.
Amazon lets you set a daily budget, and daily means 3 in the morning is the start.
Yeah, same with Google. Yeah.
Yeah. These are all, this is digital marketing. This is how it works. It's the same everywhere, except that for us, only Google and Amazon really matter. What eBay does, who cares? You know, it's not of concern.
Yeah.
All the big name authors are going to tell you set a daily budget because you don't want the ad to run amok because you get charged by the clicks, whether you make sales or not.
Yeah.
So even so, like Mark Dawson may set $100 budget. He may even set lower because he runs so many ads. That budget will start spending at 3 in the morning, and he makes enough money on his 70 books that he has that he may be able to bid $1. So he will win most of the auctions at the beginning. But once he reaches his $100, he's out of the picture for that keyword. In the evening, at night, you know, as we're approaching midnight at the West Coast, you may still be in the running for that keyword, and you'll get it for 30 cents, maybe even 20 cents. As in Canada, it doesn't even really matter because in Canada, there's so little competition because most people run ads in the US that you can pick up clicks for 6, 7, 8 cents. And again, if you're not out for sales, it doesn't matter that you're wasting the money because you really want to see what do people click on.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for clarifying. So just to go in reverse a little bit and just clarifying that I understood what I think I might have understood. So with Amazon, you have 7 keywords per format, 50 characters for a search, and the searches are Boolean in that they're or, so any of those words typed in could potentially match your keyword. Yeah. So and when you talk about what did you call them, long tail keywords, and like the point of long tail keywords is to increase the probability that search and those 50 characters are going to overlap with you and potentially bring you up. Is that one more question once you answer if that's a fair
yes, especially on the ones that you fill in randomly, it's just about getting those keywords or those words in there.
Okay. But
and then if somebody types in the long tail keyword, coming of age thriller, that is an exact match, and Cyberspiracy will rank very high on the results list. There is a point picking at least the beginning of the phrases that are gonna trigger an exact match. Yeah. Again, I can fill it up with a female protagonist and get some extra hits for a small penalty that it's not completely an exact match. But I do want to have coming of age thriller in there. Now, you notice that some search in the other direction, and in this particular case, the searches are the same. For some odd reason, the money is better in doing it in the unnatural order, quotes. And these are the little details that you can get from Publisher's Rocket. But I want either this combo or that combo in there exactly, because if I get a direct hit, I rank very highly.
Okay.
Because there's not that many coming of age thrillers.
Okay.
Didn't even warrant a category.
Okay. That's a great answer. That clarifies for me. And then initially I wrote, and I think you answered that, one thing that an author cares of is anybody selling a book, hits with market searches, which you're talking about here. But then you also mentioned success in a category. Now, I've heard a couple of authors say, "Oh, it's #1 on Amazon," and then when you look in their category, like they're 1 of 5 people, and success means like selling 1 book every year. So it's all very. There's a bit of sleight of hand that happens, and I think and I originally thought that was an either or, but I think what you're implying is that there's a symbiosis between the hits and the searches and the success in the category. So it's not just picking a really esoteric category so that I can brag that I'm #1 on Amazon, because that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to sell more books. It's the category in conjunction with a keyword high competition score that garners you the most success if you're talking about number of books sold. Is that
if that's your definition? Some people want to be able to say bestseller and get the badge, because you do get the digital badge. So you may do that for, say, 3 months until you score a bestseller ranking, because you get to keep it then. And then you can slap it on, and then you switch to actually selling books. It depends what you want.
Oh, okay. Okay, I like that idea of switching, because then ultimately, if you're trying to, let's say some authors actually start self-publish on Amazon. When they have success, a publisher comes in and say, "Oh, I really want to represent you," and they take off from that. So that might be one motivation. Then there's no fooling them by saying I'm #1 in the category, because they can easily verify that the category is minuscule. It's if you start there, you get the badge, that boosts your attractability to gain more sales, and that is what somebody on the outside who might want to publish your book or movie version or something would see.
Which is precisely why we give you the list, because we don't know what you want. You can use your own best judgment to pick what terms you want to use.
Okay.
But we will generate the data for you. That is the whole point here. And we mean this. We encourage you to do some of this yourself. And this presentation will go up on the clinic page. And the handout will go up there. So if you guys want to watch this again and do this for yourself, it's all there. It's a lot of work doing these clinics. So once the 10 are full, that's it for this year. We're considering, based on what happens this year, reoffering it annually, but it will always be limited because it's just a lot of work and somebody's got to do it. And so, I mean, ultimately, each one of us wants to get their own books out there. So we're doing this for the membership because, unfortunately, some of these tools are expensive and hard to use. So we're trying this out because you can get this from professional services. They'll charge you hundreds of dollars. Now, for that money, they will work with you longer, get your input and refine it and optimize it, but it's quite expensive. And at that point, you can just as well buy Publisher Rocket yourself. So this is kind of a cheap version to give you the tools to finish it yourself. That is the idea.
Well, I have 2 questions. Wolf, do you have a pricing list for what this costs for the clinic and the services you're offering?
You mean what we are doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on that website. If you give us a 5-page synopsis or any synopsis for that matter, We will do the book description, the categories, the keywords, tropes, themes, characters for $30.
Okay, and then so along with that, if I just do you have an option where if someone just needed help with like the keywords, the categories, and Amazon ads, do you do anything just for that? Like if
Well,
I already have everything set up and I need someone to go in and look at it and see how it could be fixed?
well, that's basically the $30 package. See,
Okay.
we'll give you the scoring so you can go look. If you
If I don't
include
want to do any of it myself, if I don't want to look, if I don't want to figure it out, I just wanted you to do it all and tell me what I need to do, kind of thing.
um we'd have to talk about it because again,
Okay, that's
the
fine.
reason those services charge so much is because the optimization is a back and forth with the author and is very time consuming. So if
Yeah.
you want us to take your manuscript down to the synopsis, that's as you saw is a three-step process where we have to go back and forth with you. That takes a lot of time. So that's $50 extra.
Okay.
And
Yeah, yeah. I
this
might
is
talk
the
to you
same
separately
thing.
about it.
The
Yeah.
optimization is very time consuming. What I would suggest is just put the keyword, do you have a synopsis?
I do. Yeah, I think I have everything. My synopsis is long though. So I could talk to you about this at a
Yeah.
separate time and
Uh,
kind of maybe there's something, maybe maybe there's a service you could offer me based on everything I have
well,
already. And
remember, this
yeah,
is all based on AI. All they
yeah.
do is they do the AI for you. If you have a synopsis,
Okay.
uh, go to Gemini, sign up for a free account, throw the synopsis at Gemini and
Yeah.
use our prompts. Now give me the keywords, give me the category, all that.
Yeah.
You can increase the numbers, no? Or you can even tell it like find the best 7 keywords.
Okay.
Then Gemini can then look at Google search data. And if it says it's too long, then start trimming stuff. But that will do that service kind of for free. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I
Sid,
just
you
might not
have the
have the
prompts.
best.
The tricky
Yeah.
part is the prompts. Take my prompts and just ask Gemini based on your synopsis what
Yeah.
it thinks. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. My other question was that last slide that you showed in Publisher Rocket. That's a new service, where you put in, where is that located in Publisher Rocket?
It's the last tab. It's called, oh, and the second to last, it's called reverse lookup.
Is it on the home page? Oh, reverse ASIN lookup.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so this kind of goes way back to just AI in general, and that in a sense, I think what you were saying, which is my experience, the output can only be as good as the input maximum and can be worse. And there's always room for human intervention in what goes in and what goes out. It will not replace humans. My background years ago in research is an optical cross connect. So I'd love that part of your talk, and I really leaned into it. I guess my question for you is in terms of using AI, it almost seems like what you were saying is that you have to tame the AI. In other words, you're kind of almost negotiating with AI so that what the output is the most useful. For example, I'll use AI very rarely in my writing. If I'm looking for a metaphor, I'll say, what's a metaphor for this? And it gives me a metaphor. I've never chosen any of their options, but it's like having a conversation with your neighbor over the hedge, and they give you ideas, and that's just brainstorming. And then your own brain takes over and says, oh, because they said this, I'm going to take it over here when you reach a bottleneck. So in other words, I guess my concern would be if my synopsis through because it's too short, because it doesn't use the words that are most effective, if that is the input to you, and then what comes out is going to be no higher quality than the quality of what was put into it, can I still glean some understanding and direction from that, putting it in the perspective of the limitations, such as the emotional marketing, the EMV, which, by the way, that also was very a golden take home from this. Or am I already pressured in my inputs to you, or if I did it on my own, to be negotiating and maneuvering around the limitations of AI to the point where, unless I'm going to put in like a 90+% effort at the input, that I'm kind of wasting my time or wasting yours.
Yeah. In the end, again, the AI is a 5-year-old. It doesn't understand any of the things that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, with the exception of Google, none of the AIs have access to the search data. Amazon doesn't have a chatbot, other than the search bar. That's how you access Amazon's chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
So the keywords are just guesses. The ones we've done so far, all the keywords suggested came back with a red button because they made sense for the story, but they just weren't searched much because the AI has never done an online search that way. It doesn't know the concept, so it doesn't know how to phrase it. It doesn't read in the genre. It doesn't know how to phrase it. Ultimately, it's like you said, it's brainstorming. The best data that you're gonna get in that regard is the reverse async lookups, because that is based on actual human searches that have taken place. So, but for a manuscript, the best you're going to get out of this is a brainstorming session and suggestions. And since we're giving you the scoring sheet, the color coded, it will tell you definitely what terms not to use, so you don't waste your time on it. But ultimately, there's no way around iterating your way up, because you have to try different terms and see what actually works, and then either use Publisher's Rocket or Amazon or Google. And I don't have a lot of data on that. You can try this in Gemini, because Gemini is integrated with search. That is a fact. You're already getting results from Gemini. My guess is Gemini has access to the Google search data. That if you actually threw keywords at Gemini or ask Gemini, find the best keywords for this synopsis, that Gemini could actually do it right, because it understands what that means. It has that database. It has the best search database in the world. It's owned by Google. My guess is sooner or later, the Google Keyword Analyzer will be replaced by Gemini. If particular keywords, I would try it on Gemini if you already have a synopsis. And the other thing you're going to get out of it is if Gemini goes totally off the rails, you might want to change your synopsis with agents and publishers and so on.
Well, that's fascinating. I feel like your brain is there's so much wealth in there, but aside from AI, and that cannot be replaced. But this is a bit tangential and totally last question. But in terms of like environmental impact, people talk about the environmental impact of AI. It's my understanding that really the impact and the power consumption comes in the teaching of the AI. So you mentioned costs of running an AI question or something. But in terms, my perception is that if I were somehow running my own AI, encouraging other people to run AI, that the environmental cost of that is small compared to the investment that created the AI.
No. Because the training is a one-time thing. But think about an 80,000 word manuscript. How much computing power you need just to parse that.
Yeah.
Then you have to assemble it. And remember, now you're doing a word search across gigantic trees with billions of nodes, trying to build every sentence. The parsing is easy. It has to give you an output in English, and it doesn't understand a word it's saying. So it's sitting there. The thriller, okay, is or was or were So, and this branches forever across billions of nodes. No, it's very expensive to run this stuff. As I said, the average question supposedly costs 4 cents. If they get it discounted, that is basically the price of a kilowatt hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's these, because as I said, the training probably takes place on a few nodes, but the biggest cluster is literally 130,000 computers that are running 24/7 and are water cooled. Pumps cost money, the air conditioners cost money. This is very expensive to do.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, anyway, I'll let somebody else go. Thank you so much.
Here are a few resources. So I have some videos about book description optimization where I go through the emotional marketing value in gory detail. Also, this presentation will be up on the clinic page with the handout because we really want to empower you guys to do this yourselves. And if you're looking for specific tools, there's a page called There's an AI for That database. This should really get you going. The only company I have experience with is Best Page Forward. Their base package is $350. There are others out there. I don't know them. I don't know how good they are. You know, Best Page Forward really does try very hard, and they have a lot of experience. They've done 1,500 book descriptions. Sorry, 1,500 book description, and because it's all interlinked, the keywords and the categories come with that because it has to all match. So that is their base package for one book description.